Hi, and welcome to Coaching Voices podcast. I'm Pravin Sharma, an executive and leadership coach and consultant with over 2 decades of experience in the industry. I truly believe in the transformative power of coaching and the profound impact it can have on people's lives. In each episode, we dive into candid conversations with seasoned coaches, exploring what coaching really is and whether it's the right path for you. Together, we uncover how you can unlock your full potential and step confidently into leadership roles within your organization. In today's episode of Coaching Voices podcast, I'm honored to introduce John Spence to our show. John is a globally recognized thought leader, executive coach, and keynote speaker with over 30 years of experience in business leadership, strategy, and personal development. He's frequently listed among the top 100 leadership speakers and executive coaches in the whole world. John has worked with organizations across 6 continents, ranging from Fortune 500 companies to high-growth startups. John holds certifications in advanced leadership methodologies and is a guest lecturer at prestigious institutions, including Harvard University and the Wharton School of Business. Outside of coaching, he's committed lifelong learner and advocate for servant leadership and a firm believer in creating impactful change through collaboration and vision. Today, we will take a deep dive into John's remarkable journey, his philosophies in leadership, and how he continues to inspire leaders worldwide. Please welcome John Spence to our Coaching Voices podcast. Hi, John. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Great to connect with you. Let's get started with the leadership journey that you have. What inspired you to focus on the leadership transformation and organizational growth in your career?
Well, I came into leadership in not an awkward way, but without really knowing it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. After failing out of college the first try, I graduated among the top in the country in my major the second try, and was hired by a private Rockefeller Foundation to do public relations, marketing, write speeches. And 3 years later, at the age of 26, I was named CEO, overseeing projects in 20 countries around the world. So I got very lucky to have excellent mentors, fantastic mentors, and was able to realize that leadership was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I've had my head down studying it now for about 30 years.
That's really great to hear about your journey. Can you share a defining moment in your career when you realized the importance of simplifying complexity? Because I know that, there is a complexity part of it, and with your help, you want to resolve it in a simpler way. So if you could talk a little bit about that simplicity, that'll be great.
Sure. I can't think of the actual day that I had the epiphany, but I realized one day that, and it's what I've built my entire career on, was pattern recognition. That if you study, I read about 100 to 120 business books a year, and I have every year since 1989. When I became CEO, and I was overwhelmed, and I just turned to leadership books to try to learn things, and business books and all kinds of types of books. And someone asked me once, how many books on, I'll just use leadership as an example. I don't know, 80, 100 maybe. He said, doesn't it get redundant? And I go, yeah, that's awesome. Because the redundancy is the dots, and it's the thread that runs through it. And if I can understand the thread, connect the dots, then I can make those dots, it takes away all the noise, and it gives you just the most essential ideas on a topic, whether it's leadership or strategy or teamwork. And then I just teach the dots. And in strategy, it's in all that work, it was easy because I was connecting the dots going backwards. Anybody can do that. From a strategy standpoint, that's the ability to connect the dots a few dots out and front, which is exceedingly hard to do.
You talk about thousands of books that you read. Maybe it's very hard for you to come up with the best one that you have ever read. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, the best book I've ever read is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, a Stoic book, because it makes me very thoughtful. And there's two major ideas behind Stoicism, which I like. One is it's not what happens to you, it's how you choose to respond to it. Mm-hmm. And then the other key lesson is understand in your life what you can control and take massive control of that, and understand what you cannot control and completely let go of that. And that's an incredible skill. Again, one I've been sharpening, but you realize there's, as we just mentioned, only two things you truly can control: your thoughts and your behaviors. And it helps you understand that a lot of the stuff that people get frustrated about, economics or politics or the weather, or on and on and on and on and on. Yeah, it's completely out of your control. It's one of the things I coach on is this isn't something that is a good use of your time, energy, effort, and anxiety, because there's nothing you can do about this. So that would be the greatest book. I'll tell you the most recent business book I read that I really enjoyed was BE 2.0 by Jim Collins and another author. And I've read all of Jim's books, and his stuff's good. I've met him and spent time with him. He's a brilliant man. But what BE 2.0, and I think it's for Business Entrepreneurship 2.0, does is it's a summary of all of his work down to just the essence. So I guess it's just the pattern of his very best ideas.
That's really exciting. The reason I'm asking that question is because I like to read book, and I like to read book that's been referred to me by somebody that I talk to, right? So, during this podcast, I have talked to many guests, and they recommend me some books. And when I go and look at it and I buy it and purchase it and try to read it, of course, I'm gaining my knowledge in that way. And thanks for sharing that information to me as well.
Well, for folks that are interested, and you as well, if you go to my website, there's a resource page there, and there is a PDF of the top 100 business books I've ever read.
I'll try that. Definitely, I'll try that.
there's a few recommendations there.
Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about the coaching that you mentioned and the executive coaching, right? You collaborate with senior executives to enhance their leadership skills, build a high-performing team, and address any kind of critical organizational priorities you mentioned, right? How do you do that? Like, what is high-performing teams means to you?
Well, I'll go ahead. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I mean, it's a stacking question. I'm asking you one after another. So let's break it down. Let's talk about how do you enhance the executives to have that leadership skills on them, so that they can lead the organization and get that fruit out from it?
Thank you for the question. I approach coaching probably a little different than most executive coaches. I call myself a business acumen coach. Mm-hmm. So the way I work with leaders is I give them homework. Mm-hmm. We're going to read this book together. We're going to watch this video. Mm-hmm. I'm going to send you some information. You're going to read it. And then we use that as the foundation of our conversations. Got it. So if someone is struggling with high performance teams, I will give them advice or information or suggestions, but I'm going to back it up with 2 or 3 articles and let them have a varied view. And one of the reasons I do that is if I give them, let's say, a Harvard Business Review article, it's 11 pages, something pretty easy to read. Right. If they don't like the ideas, they attack the author, not me. And then we can have a robust conversation instead of them saying, I don't agree with you, John, which is fine, which is great. Yeah. But instead of it being a contentious conversation, they can go, I don't agree with this article at all. And I'll go, great. Why? And then we can talk through it from a third perspective and have a very strong conversation. But it's not me versus the executive. It's me and the executive against or talking about the information. So it removes a little bit of that. So what I'll do mostly is an executive and I will pick a topic, and one that happens to be fairly popular, strategy. And I've got a couple of major memos I've written on strategy, and I'll send those. And then I'll send a couple of articles and one or two videos. And I meet with them once every other month for 2 hours. And we just discuss the stuff. And then we talk about how to apply it in their company. I'll go back really fast. When I got hired at when I became the CEO at the Rockefeller Foundation, I knew I was in way over my head. And Mr. Rockefeller had a right-hand man named Charlie Owen, who was sort of his lawyer, his accountant, everything rolled into one. And he assigned Charlie to be my mentor. And Charlie was the one that would put a book on my desk every Monday morning, and every Friday afternoon I had to make a book report to him. I had to explain what I'd read, blah, blah, blah. He'd ask me a ton of questions.
Right.
And then he would say, all right, John, what are the 3 things you're going to apply out of that book?
Yeah.
And I would write them down. He'd say, great, you're now going to be held accountable for doing that in your job. Well, let's fast forward about 35 years. It's exactly what I do with executives. Let's study this. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. Here's some ideas that I think might work for you. But I want you to write me a memo and tell me what you plan to do. And then we move down the line and talk about how's it going? What are the results? Where's there resistance? Where can we improve? But I'm trying to pick a topic and help an executive become much better at that topic. And along the way, we're bouncing in other areas.
Absolutely. And, experience is everything, right? And I really wanted to congratulate you for becoming a CEO of an international Rockefeller Foundation at the ripe age of 26. Lots of people will be dreaming that, and you have already accomplished at 26 to become a CEO. That's really great.
Thank you. That's kind of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk. So when we're talking about the executive coaching and all this, the leadership here, what are the most common challenges these leaders face today? And out of those challenges, when you get in there, how do you help them to overcome those challenges?
Well, the first and biggest right now is not one that I would have expected. It's I've got a couple of friends that have written book on, and we just, backstage, we talked about meditation and mindfulness and things like that. I've studied meditation my whole life. I use it. But sometimes when I'm coaching executives, that word seems a little, it's sitting on my desk meditating.
Yeah.
So I changed the word to thoughtfulness.
Got it.
And with that definition, it seems a little bit more business-like. So one of the biggest challenges I see is executives not taking the time to be thoughtful, not taking the time to be thoughtful about decisions they're making, not taking the time to be thoughtful about bringing in new information, new ideas, not taking time to reflect on the results of their decisions. And then tied very closely to that is EI and emotional intelligence or your EQ. Is I see a lot of executives I coach struggle with controlling their emotions. And I'm not talking about yelling and screaming and pounding the desk. I see them in meetings, and this is how I help them. I watch them in meetings, and I ask their peers to tell them, you can see them get upset. You can see them get angry. Their voice raises, or they make split decisions. And it's the ability to, and we kind of talked to it with Stozen for a second, stimulus response is to, when something happens, that you're thoughtful enough to take the time to say, what am I really feeling here? What is really going on? When do I have to make this decision? Do I have enough information? Asking yourself a few questions, and then ask yourself this question is, what would the appropriate response be in this situation? I struggle with executives that are stimulus response right again. Somebody says something, wham, immediately they have to have the answer. Taking 4 or 5 seconds to think it through, makes your perceived IQ go up by about 3 points. That's pretty cool. But it lets you reflect and get much clearer before you make a decision. I see CEOs and executives make bad decisions because they just won't take a minute or two to think it through. The other major issue is focus, that especially around strategy. Oh, here's a shiny red ball. Here's a new squirrel. Here's a new opportunity. This is going. And one thing I see is always adding stuff, rarely removing things. And, one of the core ideas around strategy is, what do you say no to? All strategy is the allocation of scarce resources. And I see a lot of CEOs and executives that just keep piling on the plate without taking things off. And that diffuses their focus. And you win when you're really focused on winning in an area around your strengths. And if you're doing 15 things, you're probably doing 13 of them poorly.
Is that could be because of the high pressure situation that they have to deal with?
Absolutely. And then the speed of technology and the speed of their competitors changing, and speed of consumer needs changing. The speed of everything right now is download speed. Get it done now.
Yeah.
I gave a big speech a couple of weeks ago, and a couple hundred people, and I said, your competitors aren't who you think your competitors are. Your competitors are Amazon. Because I can sit at my desk, I see something I like, I push a button, and literally the doorbell rings behind me and someone's handing it to me. Your competitor is Google. Why can't I find this information? Why can't you get it to me immediately? Your competitor is Apple. I want elegant design that's so beautifully crafted and so intuitive. And you've probably owned Apple products. I buy them. They come with no instructions because it should be easy enough for you to figure it out. So you're not competing with the people around you. You're competing with speed and convenience and elegant design and the best buying experience, regardless of what it was that your customers had. They're going to compare you to that. Wow, that puts a lot of pressure on senior executives to compete at that level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, these are the need of today's world, fast changing world, right? So these three elements that you just mentioned, going from Google, Apple, and then Amazon, I believe the success is there if you follow these three principles together. Let's pivot a little bit of this conversation and talk about the results, right? If you could give us an example of a time when you helped any sort of organization that you dealt with to overcome the significant leadership or strategy challenge.
Yeah, I can think of several where there was options about moving into new markets, buying companies, divesting companies, and that's a lot of pressure. And the few I can think of was helping CEOs clear away all the noise and get down and say, what do we truly do well? Where can we compete? How can we be differentiated? What's a way that we can? I have a formula for strategy. And it is all strategy is value differentiation multiplied by disciplined execution. That means that an organization must meet these four criteria. Whatever you bring to the marketplace must be unique and compelling. Number two, that your target customer values very highly, happy to pay any price for. Number three, that is difficult, if not impossible to copy. And number three, difficult if not impossible to copy. And number four is that you can consistently execute it with excellence. So there's a lot of elements there. And I work with a lot of credit unions. Happens to be a space I know. I could think of several CEOs that we've sat down and gone through that, and I've helped them. And then the key after that is, how do we communicate this? How do we create a plan that is actionable? And then the other big one is accountability. How do I build a culture of accountability that actually executes the plan? Lots of people can come up with great strategies. Unfortunately, a very small percentage of people effectively execute their strategy. That's one of the areas that I really try to say, ideas are fantastic. Action and results are what pays the bills.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And then when you get engaged in these kind of engagements, I would say either like coaching or consulting, how do you measure the success?
That's measured by the client. We sit down at the beginning of an engagement and create a document that says, at the end of this is how I'll behave differently. This is how the organization will differently. This is, how my executive team will operate together. And we're very, very clear about what success looks like, exceedingly clear about what the goal is. And then we constantly measure against that and talk. Quantifiably, we can do that. But I have had clients in the past who wanted to put a dollar amount on it. We will make this much more money. Or John, will you will you work for, results? Will you get, we'll pay you a percentage of our profits if we do well. And I did that once, and the company about 2 months later closed the largest deal in the history of their entire company, and my fee would have been about $2 million. And the executive came back, hey, can we go back to that original monthly fee? So I sit down and get a very clear picture with metrics, KPIs, if we can put it on them, and we do.
Right.
We just talk to say, am I meeting those goals?
So what I'm inferring from that conversation is you have some sort of like metrics that you establish on day one, and you measure that metrics after day 30, day 60, day 90, whatever it is out there, so that, you want to see that needle moving to the right direction. And that's how you're saying that, well, this is the success that you want to see, right?
Yeah, the client and myself have agreed on metrics and goals and things like that. And the key is I talked to some of the folks that asked me to do things, and I go, I learned a long time ago, I only step to the plate if I know I can hit a home run. If I can't, I'm going to hand it off to somebody else, because my number one goal is a client that gets what they need. I mean, this should be any business, is to say my number one thing is to help you be successful, customer. And if I can do that, then I succeed at some level. So if someone asks me to coach on an area that I'm not skilled in, I bring them to the smartest person I can find, hand them over, and then they'll often say, what's your referral fee? And I said, my referral fee is for that client to call me and say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This person was awesome, exactly the right person. Because the goal for all of us should be, if we're going to be a coach, is help people improve their lives, whether I get to do it or not.
Right. I mean, that's a great thought, actually. I mean, just to see the client success is what we thrive on, right? So absolutely, yeah. When we talk about the growth itself, people are more inclined to see short-term growth versus long-term, and people are not inclined to have that long-term vision in there. I mean, that's what I've seen, because, the instant gratification that they get is from that short-term win, right? So I don't know if it ever happens to you or no, that, you help the client in getting where they wanted to go and they see the short-term success. But, once you exit out from that, advisory or consulting or coaching role, whatever you want to call it, whether or not that particular client will have the long-term goal or no without your involvement in there. Have you seen anything like this in your 30 plus years career?
Yes, and no. I get it straight. I've had a few clients like that and warned them, you're not really sticking to this as well as you should. And it's in a couple of months or a year or two, you're going to be right back where you started. You're doing great now. Things are on track now. But I've been working with you for a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. And I know that if you don't stay focused, you slip. And I'm afraid you're going to slip. What I do with almost all my clients is I say, even though we don't have a paid engagement in every more, 2 hours every 2 weeks, I'll always be around to help you. And I'll always be a resource. And then I have a standing call with most of my clients twice a year, just to check in and say, how's everything going? What's happening with you? So although I might not be engaged anymore, I've stayed connected to all of them. And if they start to slip or have a problem, they pick up the phone and call me or send me an email, and we chat for an hour, and I try to help them out and get them back on track. So to give you an answer, I would say 80% of the people that I work with, and it's not me, it's them. They're smart, bright, talented people, are still using the stuff they learned with me. And another big part of that is I ask them to teach it to other people in their organizations. If I work with a CEO really hard on high performance teams or strategy, like the best way you're going to remember this is go out and teach it to your senior team, then go out and teach it to the next level in your organization. Be an instructor, be a guide, be a coach, and it will be part of your life.
Yeah, I truly believe in that one. And that, the ultimate success for the leader is to produce more leaders, right? So
Absolutely.
if you cannot do that, then your leadership is really failing, right? Because you are more self-centered in this particular organization that you work for, because you're not helping other people grow. I mean, so it's really critical for you, if you're a leader, if you're listening to this as a leader, then your ultimate job is to make sure that you produce more leaders like you.
Yeah,
So
I have a saying, you must plant the seeds of trees under which you may never sit.
Yeah, yep. And there is a saying also, like there is a candle is not dimmed by lighting other candles,
Exactly.
right? So in a reflection, I mean, it gets more brightness in the room. So if you lit like 100 candles, just like the one that you have. So that's one of the key things that I kind of like learn.
Excellent.
So let's talk a little bit about the your since you've been in this industry for more than 3 decades or so. So let's talk about some of the advice that people can take away from you. Let's talk about 2 things here. One about the executive coaching and one about the leadership, right? So when we talk about somebody wants to become an executive coach, what are the traits that are required for that individual to go into that path or in that career?
Knowledge. You've got to be competent, highly competent in the area that you plan to coach. Humility. It's not your job to tell other people what to do. And curiosity. But I will say there are some coaches I work with that all they do is ask questions. What do you think? What's your idea about that? That's a therapist, and that's cool if that's the way you want to do it. But I believe you should be able to walk in at close to a peer and have the calm confidence, the humility, curiosity to be able to ask questions and offer sage advice and help people look in the mirror and really sort of challenge them in ways that their staff can't challenge them. Years ago, I went to buy my first house. And the mortgage broker said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a consultant and an executive coach." And he goes, "In other words, you don't have a job." And I said, "Let me help you understand something.
Yeah.
I have 27 clients right now. If one of my clients fires me, I still get 26 paychecks. If you get fired, you're unemployed."
Yeah.
Let's just say I didn't get the loan from that particular bank.
Right.
But here's the point is, if you're carrying a load of, like I am right now, 15 or 20 different people you're working with and different organizations you're helping, if someone doesn't want to learn or they don't want to apply what you're doing, or it's just not working, it's best to not quit. I want to say to politely rescind your offer of assistance, and not have to worry about it. Like I say things to CEOs, not in a mean or aggressive way, but you've got a real problem that you don't listen to your people. And I know that because they call me and tell me that. And I'm coaching our whole executive team. And you've got to learn to shut up in meetings. And I'm not quite that aggressive, but I tell them things like, you don't listen, you talk too much, you're scaring people, blah, blah, blah. They don't want to hear that. If they don't like that and they fire me, then that's fine. And I've only been fired by one client in 30 years. And he just wasn't listening to anything. And his goal was every time my senior management team starts to be a pain in the butt and they're not, I just fire them all and get a new one. And I was in the time with him, he had fired this is about a $3 billion company. He had fired his entire senior management team 3 times.
Yeah.
I finally went and said, the problem's not your senior management team, the problem's you.
Yeah, but at the same time, John, right, in the retrospect, did the company fired you or you fired the company, right?
I fired the company.
Yeah, exactly. So there's always some kind of reciprocal that happens in there saying that, well, we feel like, well, they fired you, but at the same time, there is that notion that you fired them as well. That's how.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well put. Well, that was the only one where HR called me and said, "We no longer need your services."
Yeah.
And I was like, "It's okay," because I wasn't helping anyways.
Right.
This has been as painful for me as it has been for you. I actually had one client that assigned me a Fortune 100 company that assigned me a very, very high level senior executive that had been there like 17 years and was struggling. And he wouldn't do any of the work. He didn't want to come to meetings, didn't know that. So I went back and said, "Here's all your money back. I'm not going to accept any fee because I didn't make any difference in change." And it was not a small check, but the idea was I didn't deserve it because I didn't earn it,
Mm-hmm.
and no positive change was made. So there was no reason to invest in me, which
Mm-hmm.
was one of the biggest things I've learned in my career is you can't fix broken people. When
Mm-hmm.
I started in coaching, I really did not enjoy it
Mm-hmm.
because I kept getting broken people and told, you're the last chance they have before they get fired.
Mm-hmm.
That almost never, ever works. Now I only work with really good people who want to get better. Someone who's already successful but wants to take it to the next level. They're running a $1 billion company. They want to get it to 4 billion, or they want to go to a new career or start a new company. And those folks, they'll do the homework. They'll read. They show up for meetings. They're prepared. They apply what they're learning. And I learned that when you have clients like that, it typically turns out to be a really successful engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always have to reflect on their vision, right? What's your vision? What do you want to do, right? So, I mean, it needs to be tangible for sure, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I think that's also one of the way to understand whether or not they are in the zone or no. So, it's very critical. So, talking about from the coaching perspective, now let's talk about from the leadership perspective, right? If I know that you've dealt with somebody who worked in a company for 17 years trying to struggle and trying to get their game up, that kind of thing. But for those, I mean, I consider like from the director level and up, they're in the leadership position, right? So for instance, some managers or somebody who wants to step in that leadership role at the very first time, what sort of advice would you like to give to that individual? So you are giving that advice for him or her into the successful path?
A couple of things. The first is I try to help them understand that your technical competence is not as important anymore.
Right.
You're not doing the work anymore. You're
Mm-hmm.
managing the people who manage the people who manage the people that do the work. Your
Mm-hmm.
real work now is working with and through other people. So
Mm-hmm.
your technical expertise in engineering is pretty much useless.
Yeah.
Now it's your ability to lead people, build teams, communicate well, all those sort of things. And I think that's a really big jump that people want to go back to. Well, I'm really good at this. I'm really good at this. I'm really good at that. No, now you have to be really good with people. The other thing is a dedication to lifelong learning. I'm a fanatic for this. Obviously, I said I read a lot, but I did a bunch of research on this, and ChatGPT helped me a couple of years ago take the research to another level.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the average business person worldwide, the average business person reads a half a business book or self-improvement book a year, a half, to get better at communication or vision or leadership or strategy, whatever it might be. If you were to read one book every other month or the equivalent thereof, you'd be in the top 5% on the face of the earth for self-learning.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to read 12 a year, you'd be in the top 1%. And one of the things I try to help leaders understand is that the answers are not out there, but the information to help you get to the answers is in podcasts like today, audiobooks, books, YouTube videos, blogs, magazines. Never in the history of humankind has more information been available for free.
Yeah.
So a big thing with me is if you're not, I tell leaders, if you're not reading, if you read the average of 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, that would be the equivalent of about 8 books a year, which would put you in the top 3% on the face of the earth. If you did that year after year after year, it's not that you're smarter. It means you have more access to information than the people around you. And that information is what allows you to be a better leader and run a better company.
Great advice. I understand about this technicality is no longer needed. People do not want to let it go because they're in that technical role for 20 plus years, whatever.
Right.
And it's very hard to let that go. And what I've seen is like, some of the leaders that are in that position, they still wanted to bring their technical acumen so that they'll tell people what to do, not by, I don't know, that there is a trust issue in there, whether or not the person who is doing the work, the technical work, will be doing the same. So in the reflection, when I talk to these guys, they're like, oh, this guy's not working the way that he should, she should, that kind of thing. But at the same time, like, create a culture of autonomy, give them the power of what they wanted to do, not just by enforcing yourself on telling them what to do. I mean, trust them. So trust is the biggest thing. And then in the leadership also, I think this relationship that you mentioned about, like, because you got to work with the people, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to create a culture that enables these people who's going to be working for you to come and accomplish your vision, So that's that sort of environment, that sort of culture, that sort of, the whole strategy needs to be focused on that how these people will come together to make that vision a reality, because alone you cannot do it for sure.
Yeah, it needs to be a shared vision with a compelling purpose. Why are we doing this? And then a leader that says, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to ask you, how can I help you? How can I serve you? Because for a leader, their most important customer by far is their employees. And I've got all these little sayings. It's one of my favorite ones. The customer's experience will never exceed the employee's experience. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So a leader who treats their people with trust and respect and autonomy, and my favorite word, love, mm-hmm. Is going to get someone who's more committed and motivated and, in the end, customer focused, which makes the whole company succeed. And, you hit on a point. I think that's one of the biggest challenges I see sometimes is leaders that don't understand they work for their people, not the other way around. Right.
Absolutely. John, we're coming towards the end of this conversation. Any final thoughts that you want to reflect on?
Just that leadership is and coaching, let's just put it both ways, is mm-hmm. a huge responsibility. There are people that depend on you to be successful. They depend on you to help them pay their mortgage, put their kids through college, get a promotion, make the company run well. So it's a responsibility that shouldn't be taken lightly. And that's why you need to be extremely competent, extremely caring, and focused on the client's success, because that's what they're paying you for, and that's what their family and the business and the community are hoping you can do for them as well.
That's great. And if somebody's listening to this conversation, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Well, you can go to my website, johnspence.com, or if you've got a question, just send me an email directly. I'm happy to help. My email's john@johnspence.com. I answer all my own email. It might take me a little while. And if it's important or urgent, just put that in all caps in the subject line, and I will answer your email immediately. And if I don't have the answer, I will find someone who does.
John, it's really nice talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been my pleasure. It's been my honor. Have a super day.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Coaching Voices podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you valuable insights into the world of coaching and leadership. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps others find the show and supports us in continuing to bring you inspiring content. Do not forget to share this episode with anyone you think might benefit from the discussion. And if you're looking to explore coaching further or have any questions, please feel free to connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and stay curious.